Brian. They'll introduce themselves and start the presentation. So first off, our webinar will be recorded and distributed through email after the webinar is over, as well as available on our website. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your window, and they'll be answered when the presentation is over. If you can't connect to the webinar at any point or the audio drops out, you can let me know through the chat box, or you can follow the instructions from the invite email. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brian.
Yeah, hello, it's Brian Bueling, and thanks, Avi, for the introduction. Today, we're going to go through a topic that's pretty important to me personally and our company as we work with Just Systems around implementing DITA technology. There's been a lot of talk, and we've done a lot of work with explaining what DITA is, how it can benefit companies to automate their publishing processes. But it doesn't do any good if you can't get the support within an organization to actually get a project started. So for today, we really just want to go through 3 or 4 points. So we'll go through a brief introduction, a little bit more detail about myself and Dakota Systems, spend a little bit of time talking about actually what is meant by DITA and DITA projects. This webinar assumes that you're familiar with DITA, at least conceptually. You're familiar with structured writing and Just Systems and how creating and managing and distributing technical documentation in XML, and particularly DITA, offers benefits. But this is going to focus on communicating those benefits, and then in particular, when you encounter the most common objection, which is there's no resources to change the system that's in place. For the most part, people theoretically agree that there's benefits to moving to a DITA-based publishing environment, but those theoretical benefits aren't sufficient enough to change the way companies do work. So we'll talk about the three or four steps that are necessary to actually get a project from concept into actual implementation. So a little bit about myself. I'm the managing director of Dakota Systems. We're based out of Chicago. We focus primarily helping technical publication groups get their operations streamlined. Sometimes that means data conversion. Sometimes that means working closely with Just Systems and XML, configuring an XML editing environment. Sometimes that means working on the content management piece or the publishing. The justification for really our company in general is it's not sufficient enough just to come up with an idea that this is going to benefit a company and then selecting the editing, content management, and publishing tools. There's more to it, whether it's the data conversion, the integration piece, the training, or the support that often companies need to get jump-started. So we've been around for, I guess, this is our 14th year, and it's still a growing need for the technical publication integration services. People know what needs to be done. There's great products that handle points of the technical publication system, ecosystem, but pulling it all together, people still need help. Although we're located in Chicago, and most of our work is in the U.S., this type of implementation is generally accepted. It's used across multiple industries around the world. We don't develop a lot of software ourselves. There's again, great companies that put together XML editing software, content management software, and publishing software. We work integrating them all together to get a custom solution. We did that for about five years, and then it seemed like people needed help with building it themselves. We offered that as training in 2004, and then we've seen that people need help running it from an operational support, and sometimes we host the systems, and that's been a growing part of our work over the last three years. So you can imagine that this type of project and this type of architecture using DITA to manage technical documentation grew out of manufacturing, or a little bit out of aerospace defense, but we're seeing that it's used across other industries as well. Right now, I'd say over 70% of our new implementations are using DITA if it's around technical publications, and only 50% of those are from where you'd expect to find them. We're seeing pretty exciting uses of DITA in government, publishing, and even other industries. So our company came from a technical origins. We worked with XML, that's SGML. We understand that the underlying architecture really offers a lot of benefits, and we've worked with hundreds of different implementations. But the point of this presentation is not to talk about the hundreds of implementations where they understood the business need, they understood the technology, they went out and got the software we've helped put in the systems. It's the thousands of non-implementations. Again, I can't emphasize enough, we formed our company around the technology first, not so much around the sales and marketing of driving new technology. It's the building of it. So for every one implementation that we had where they thought it was a great idea and there's enough momentum to push it in, we've teamed up with technical writers, technical publications managers, directors of technical publications. Theoretically, we had some plan in place to convert, let's say, a frame environment or an interleaf environment, even some other proprietary publishing system into DITA, and it made perfect sense. But after all this research, after all this prototyping, we get these responses like, this is great, this is perfect, but there's no budget to do anything. Or sometimes there even was a budget, but just the existing team had real jobs. They had to work on the existing release of their technical documentation, and so we had to wait. It wasn't important enough to interfere with existing business. Oftentimes, magically, when people see the time and effort and cost that's involved with putting a new system, they'll come up with workarounds, find simpler solutions, or just go with some Band-Aid solution. So it's really important for a company, and then when we work and it's typically not the CEO of a large company that's coming to us. It's typically not even a vice president that can just snap their fingers and get a project started. It's typically people working in an existing environment. And, we have to work with them not only on crafting the right solution, but also communicating that idea makes sense, and communicating that DITA, XML publishing, all these technologies are important enough to invest time and money in to people who don't care about DITA, who don't care about publishing, and don't care about the complexities that are behind the scenes. So, this is an image of the type of system that we're talking about. So when we talk about justifying a DITA-based publishing system, it's just that. It has an editing environment. There's typically content management. There's publishing that goes out to multiple channels. There's data conversion involved. There's some training, and for most people that's done a little bit of research in DITA, they understand the complexities and the moving pieces to get a system like this in place. So we're not going to go into the anatomy of each one of these pieces and the strategic architecture pieces that have to be put in place to guarantee success. But this is what we're talking about in terms of this system needs to be implemented. And the process that's typically used, there's lots of permutations of this, but you can see that there's some initial planning, then it goes into a first prototype that can be used for requirements, then a second prototype to where you have some draft, more finalized design, then it goes into a detailed design, then a final code, integration, test, and implementation. There's lots of permutations of this, but this is the type of system that you should be envisioning when we talk about we need to justify it. and this is the standard process that you guys are probably familiar with implementing it. There's more waterfall where it's just dealing with this last curve. There's more agile development where there's more cycles in there. But the purpose of this talk is to talk right about the beginning, when you're dealing with communicating the concept of a new system before anyone has invested the time and energy. And there might even just be a blanket statement saying that there's no budget to do anything. So we'll be talking about putting in this type of system right at the beginning of the planning phases. And with any presentation, there's probably about 40 slides here. If there's any to commit to memory, any points that I'd like you to take from this, it's really this slide right here. We've seen that there's 4 necessary steps that really have to be taken in the right order in order to get a project approved. Without exception, when we've seen those quotes before, there's no budget, we found other solutions, we have to wait to the next release, it's because we cheated in this phase. A lot of times we don't go through and really understand what's the pressing need is to put in a system. We'll jump right into trying to justify why a DITA-based solution is in place by trying to calculate return on investment. Sometimes we know that, I don't want to pick on Adobe or Frame, but sometimes we know that there might be some Frame fanatics that are really happy with the existing environment, or some people might be using Word and SharePoint, and we start formulating an argument against them. Or sometimes we start building. We start showing what can be done. You call us up. You call up Just Systems. They'll gladly show you how a set of documentation can be formed in a proof of concept. But what we find is you really have to go through these steps in parallel, because if you start with trying to dig in for a ROI calculation without determining the overall urgency, it's going to fall flat. Same thing if you start showing the proof of concept, you start even putting in evaluation licenses, people start playing with it. If you don't address some of the naysayers that are going to be lurking out later in the project, or you don't have some numbers to justify the cost, the project will fail. And so, without exception, when we haven't gone through these steps in order, somewhere down the line the project loses steam. So what we're going to talk through is, really what these 4 steps are. Really starting with creating the urgency. And to illustrate this, and we used to do this all the time. We thought that if we could come up with a solution that would save people money to automate PDF generation and then create different profiles of outputs for different customers and automatically update a website through some XSLFO process out of XMetal, that we'd be able to, people would just fall over for it. And then we, because we, being technology people, we leaned a little bit too much on this proof of concept. But then we jumped into what is kind of the state of the industry now is, well, no, you can't do that. You have to come up with a return on investment. And this is coming from a site that we worked on recently that was developed before we came on. They put a lot of time and energy looking at the personnel costs and non-personnel costs, the net cash flow, and they come up with a return on investment of 55%. What you think is fantastic. Where can you spend a dollar and get 55-cent return on this? And they did a lot of work, and they had a proof of concept to demonstrate it. Well, what I'm seeing now is this didn't convince anybody. Nobody is going to invest literally years of their lives converting to a new system, spending all of their internal budget just based on a spreadsheet that's like this.